Am I ever glad your church is air conditioned? I was driving here thinking, oh my gosh, is it going to be warm? What's it doing out there? It looks like it's getting dark. So have we been here a long time? Is it supper time? I don't know. I think we're going to have a free car wash as we sit here. You may recall I was here before back in 2019 when Reverend Karen was away. And a funny thing happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was preparing for the homily for today and for next weekend, and I went through my files. Whenever I write a homily, I keep them and kind of refer back to them and adjust them as needed. But back in 2019, when I was coming here, I'd written a homily. And when I arrived at the church here, I discovered, to my horror, that I had prepared the wrong readings. You can imagine what that's like for a preacher, arriving, 20 minutes beforehand and having to kind of put some thoughts together and look halfway intelligent. I remember sitting on the couch over there, I think it's over there, writing furiously on some paper based on the readings that were handed to me just a few moments before. But it gets better. 2 weeks ago, when I was going through my notes, I came across the homily that I wrote then, and it happens to be today's gospel. They say better late than never. Well, here's the homily that I wrote for you 6 years ago based on today's gospel. How sweet is that? Thank you, God. So, as I said, we hear a familiar parable today, the parable of the Good Samaritan. It's a story that we've heard again and again. We've probably heard lots of reflections about it. And many great homilists and preachers have talked about this story and used it and reflected on it and preached about it. One of these great preachers was the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The actual day before he was assassinated, he gave his very last speech in Memphis, Tennessee. And in his address, he talked about this parable of the Good Samaritan. Towards the end of his reflection, he talked about why the priest and the Levite did not stop for the traveler. You'll recall they went over to the other side. They didn't want to get involved. They thought it might be dangerous, and so they just walked over to the other side. He imagined, Dr. King imagined that maybe those men were just simply afraid. The road from Jerusalem to Jericho was quite dangerous. And so Reverend King said, and so the first question that the priest asked, the first question that the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? I think that's a very human thing. If we see something going on, some violence, some of us, I think myself included, would rather not get involved. We just want to kind of walk away, and because we're afraid. We're not sure what could happen. But then the Good Samaritan came by, and he reversed the question. Rather than saying, what will happen to me? The Good Samaritan said this, if I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? See the difference? If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? And of course, the story unfolds, and you know what happens. I think Reverend King helps us to consider our Christian discipleship with these good questions. The latter one should be the guiding principle of our approach toward those who are in need. What would happen to others if we would not offer help? What would happen to them? Do we stop and think about that? What's going to happen to them if we don't offer our help? And so Reverend King's reflection on the parable of the Good Samaritan is a lesson on how to be loving and merciful and compassionate to our neighbors, and even total strangers whom we do not know at all. The Samaritan was concerned more about the well-being of the person rather than focusing on background or class or possible danger. This invites us to ask ourselves this morning here in Milton at Grace, What should we as Christians, as followers of Christ, do in order to be good neighbors? A couple of examples, a couple of ideas that might help us with that. As we know, in our world as it is today, there are many nations that are torn apart by war. And many people are fleeing, are desperately fleeing, trying to find refuge, trying to find a different place to live in order to survive, in order to be away from the danger. These refugees of various cultures and faiths are in need of help. And many have reached out. Many have welcomed them. But because of our human nature, perhaps like the priests and the Levites, it may still be quite natural for humans to fear what would happen to them if these people were to arrive on their doorstep. Perhaps there won't be enough resources to go around for everyone. What about jobs? What about health care? The needs for the community? This might challenge people even to look at having to face different races, cultures, and faiths. Jesus in the gospel today sums it all up very, very simply by saying, "You shall love these people. You shall love them as much as you shall love God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and mind. You shall love your neighbor." It's not a suggestion. You shall implies a command. It's from God himself. Let me give you another story, share another story, an illustration that I think will bring this home. This story centers around a young man who worked for the city of Guelph in the maintenance department. On one particular morning, he was assigned to go to Guelph Lake and pick up goose poop on the beach. Not something that most of us would want to do. You can well imagine he wasn't too thrilled about that as well. Who would want to go walk on a hot beach and pick up goose poop all day? Naturally, he began to ask himself, "Why me? This isn't very good. What did I do to deserve this? My boss probably doesn't think much of me." So off he went along with 3 of his colleagues to Guelph Lake. As he arrived on this sunny day, he began to think about it and try to make the best of it. And he said to himself that he would try to make the most of his day and try to push through. But once he got there, he experienced a pleasant surprise, something that he would not have expected. It turned out to be a very positive day after all. You see, when these 4 young men arrived at the beach, the people who were already there knew exactly what they were going to do. They were going to clean up the awful mess. And so they were delighted to see them. They welcomed them, they cheered them, they praised them, they offered them water and soft drinks and even some of their food. People were thanking them for what they were doing. The young men were, of course, feeling much better now about their assignment. It wasn't so bad after all. When the end of their shift drew near, they were approached by a Muslim family, invited to have dinner with them at the camp that they had set up earlier in the day. This young man said, "We were treated like their most honored guests. We got to know each other. Oh, and the food," he said, "so much tasty food." At the end of the meal, they offered to send the young man home with all the leftovers. What's also noteworthy in this story is that earlier in that afternoon, the young man that we spoke about at the beginning ran into a woman on the beach who was very racist, making unkind comments about the Muslim family and how they were just being together, eating and having fun. This did not sit well with him, and he gently told her to be quiet and to stop saying these things. He stood up for them. Later that evening, the young man reflected on how the experience of the Muslims' hospitality and their love changed everything for him. He didn't see any differences. The only thing that he saw was love, hospitality, and joy. His final words about the day were, "This started up to be quite literally a crappy day for me, picking up goose poop. But this has turned out to be one of the best days of my life. A day full of love, laughter, good food, new friends, and joy." Who is our neighbor? Who is our neighbor? He is the homeless man begging. She is a refugee. He is an addict. She is a sick child. He has AIDS. She has mental illness. He is dying in a hospice. She is gay. They are transgender. She is a Muslim or a Christian. He is an atheist. He's my next door neighbor who never says hello to me. Jesus simply says to us, all these people are your neighbors, and you must love them as you love yourself and your God. And most importantly, if you take anything away from this, think of this. If you don't stop and if you don't help, what will happen to them?